So I'm just going to kind of walk you briefly through my story of getting into apparel design. This is one of my favorite quotes. Until the lion tells their tale, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. It's kind of how I feel about outdoor design. I never thought about getting into it for multiple reasons, but I feel like I never saw myself represented as a female and as a Black female within the industry. And so I am a big advocate for diversity in the industry. And I think it's important to talk about my ancestry and the contributions that Black people have made to the outdoors and why it's important that we're here. So I was born in Eugene, Oregon, and then moved to Lincoln, Nebraska when I was pretty young. Made a couple of stops along the way. I lived in Ohio, California, and Los Angeles. I've lived in Seattle, but I've come back to Oregon multiple times. When I was a little girl, like I said, I didn't know that a career in design was really possible. I didn't come from a family where college was an option or it was something that I thought I would ever do. I thought I would get out of school and then eventually get a job and just have a job and not necessarily a career. So I don't know if it's still this way, but how it kind of used to be to become apparel designer is really about education, experience, and connections. So step one is you secure those loans to attend college and complete a degree program, and you really get hands-on experience through a mentorship program and learn that business of fashion through help and guidance along the way. And then you put together that portfolio and send it out into the world and find employment through those mentorships and connections. But because it is very rooted in who you know, as we know, the percentage of Black designers who are a member of the Council of Fashion Designers of America are 12 out of 470. I mean, it is getting better. In outdoor, those numbers are even worse. But when I finally decided to go to community college and figure out what I wanted to do. And when I got there, was the first time I'd ever learned about the Harlem Renaissance movement, and it really blew my mind. I was going to school to be an African American history professor because it just wasn't something that we were taught in school. And in college, my world just got opened up so much. And I fell in love with the Harlem Renaissance movement and women like Josephine Baker, and really wanted to transform this idea of empowerment through clothing and art. And so I ended up dropping out of community college and going to the only college that would probably accept me at that time, because I didn't do really great in high school, and I went to a for-profit college, the Art Institute of Portland here. I had never sewn, I had never drawn anything, and I ended up doing really, really well in design school. Though something that I did realize when I was there is that there just wasn't a lot. It was very European centric, and there wasn't a lot of different views on how you could draw your croquis or how your inspiration. I had a lot of West African influence in how I like to design, and I wasn't allowed to use those fabrics. I wasn't allowed to draw my croquis a little bit more with big afros and bigger body types. And this was maybe 10 years ago. So it's fascinating how much design has changed in over a decade. So when I got there, I was just really nervous and felt like I was being really forced to conform into a system and an industry that wasn't accepting of my aesthetics and thought process. But I had really developed over the course of my life like a tough skin. And so I really had to trust my dopeness and know that even though maybe I had to conform in that moment, to get through school, that once I was out, I was hopefully not going to have to do that as much. So along the way, I really found myself attracted to the outdoor industry. When I was first in college, I thought I would start my own business, and I was making these West African style gowns with lots of beadwork, lots of jewelry. But I live in Portland, Oregon, and there's not a huge market for that. And it was a little bit more than I wanted to take on right out of college. So I applied to like Nike and Adidas, and then I started looking at Columbia and Under Armour and the North Face and Eddie Bauer and jobs and more outdoor centric. I grew up pretty poor, and so the only thing that we would do is just go camping because it was really inexpensive, and we could get in our big van and just drive and visit all of the national parks. I lived behind, a rock quarry was right behind me growing up, so we would just constantly go play in the rock quarry. And so when I started working at Columbia, that was my first internship out of college, I just realized that, again, the industry was just very European male, top of mountain centric, and there wasn't a lot of room. We were pinking and shrinking at that time, and it was kind of a shock to the system because it was something that I enjoyed so much, and I just didn't get why we weren't considering the other people within that space. So when I first started interning, that's really what I focused on in design. So I focused on the equity and equality. I really think about consumers as human beings and what each individual human being in those intersectionalities and how they play into the product. And I really do feel like it says here that apparel really needs to be functional, efficient, and support the psychological, social, and cultural requirements of its occupants. It also needs to be very considerate of our environment. Outdoor plays such a huge part in, and apparel in general, as you know, plays a huge part in our environment and how we interact with it within those clothes, and how we're creating these textiles is something also really important to think about. So that's really been my mission since I got into the industry. And this was something that I created with a visual artist just to kind of get all my thoughts out, to figure out like how I could proactively try to attract and get people interested in thinking bigger about the outdoors and the apparel industry. I also, so I've worked for Columbia, Eddie Bauer, and Nike, and a couple of other little places like Sword and Fern and Jarbo. And my favorite product that I've ever designed was hunting and fishing apparel. So I designed that for about 2 years, and it really opened my eyes to the contributions that Black folks had made to this particular industry, and it was really fascinating. And it was one of the most eye-opening moments in my career to get to be a part of that. And I learned how to, I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go duck hunting. I've been elk hunting. I went and fished for, what is it called? I'm drawing a blank for the type of fish that I went and would on the the flats in Florida, and went fishing out there. It was just such a joy to be in community with the environment in that way, and it really changed the way that I thought about design again. Like, it just added another layer onto it, and that community is so tight. And I remember I would sit down and just read about how fish interacted, and how fish could hear and see and smell and like all of these other things. And I remember every time I would carry a book around and sit down somewhere, someone would come up to me and want to talk to me about my book or about their trip and why they love to hunt and fish. It's one of the most incredible products to be able to work on. Kind of already talked about this idea of we know how many people of color work in like NGOs and government agencies and foundations and outdoor, but we really don't know that in the corporations, on the corporate side. So currently I'm working on a grant, applying for grants to do a research paper about how many people of color are working in the outdoor industry. It's the second largest GDP, and I think it's really important that there's multiple voices involved in that industry because it touches so much, and that's from, like you've learned in the class, from apparel to product development to materials. Just the industry is so incredibly massive, and the things that you can do in it are endless, and having multiple and different people of different intersectionalities working there are really, really important. And along the way, I ended up meeting this gentleman, Willard, who's helping me with my grant writing, and held the first all Black, Black and Indigenous, was like an online class about designers and influencers and retailers and just what they want to see from the industry. Willard's been fishing since he was a little boy, and he owns the 4W's Fishing out in Florida. A really incredible human being, and there's so many people doing really great work that are so inspiring, like Chad Brown and Tracy from Brown Folks Fishing, and Wild Diversity is another one. And I really do feel that the industry in general as an apparel designer, they really have a lot of challenges, but to become really influential and socially sustainable for a lot of generations, we have to address the homogeny that exists there and really think differently about how we design. So that's my speech to you about that. But I can also quickly kind of run through the team research that we've been doing recently, if that would be helpful. Is that helpful, Chase, now that I'm done with, and Andrew, now that I'm done with my speech?
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
So right now, we always design in a couple of years out. So this is kind of what we're working on right now for spring 22. So we're really just talking so currently I'm working at Columbia, and we're talking about just the rise of internet culture and how people have greater access to the raw materials and how people are equipping themselves with the rise of Instagram and TikTok. Young designers and creatives are really taking matters into their own hands and crafting things and wanting more from larger corporations like Columbia. And so how can we give people that that hands-on kind of this was made just for you, and very thoughtful design. And a lot of the basic market drivers that we're looking at right now are like this modern basic t-shirts, up-leveling sweats, this perfect elastic waistband, especially now that we're in this different environment where you're not having to dress up as much and you don't have to go out and you can sit in your, I'm wearing my zombie slippers right now, because I don't gotta put shoes on. And so that just real comfort that we have gotten away from when we had to go out into the world, and how can we make our outdoor apparel more comfortable for people, and really focusing on those emerging trends like eco-friendly jackets, just those really core colors and interesting textures that people are looking for. And then we always look at those leading players that are like Patagonia, Arc'teryx, The North Face, Montclair, Snow Peak REI. There's so many, there's so much competition in this space, that how can we stay current and ahead of those leading players. And where we see growth opportunities as designers are in that sustainability, really focusing on fit. Especially right now, I work on global women's sportswear. So fit is really, really, really critical to making sure that women feel good in what they're wearing, and that they can expect the same thing whether they're buying a pair of sweats from us or they're buying a pair of snow pants. And then the disruption of seasonality, just again, because the world is changing so much, seasonality looks different now. There isn't so much this like spring, summer, fall, winter, because of global warming and everything else. We really have to focus on how to meet that need when we're merchandising the line. These are just more market dynamics and emerging opportunities about growing awareness about the health and fitness lifestyles, sustainability, race, culture, and appropriation and technology. Those are always challenges that we have to deal with. And then right now, hiking is a huge thing for us, and it's a huge thing for so many communities, that it's a really big opportunity. This was an interesting stat that the hiking gear and equipment market size was valued at I can't even read it. 20 million in 2018, and it's projected to reach 28 million by 2026. So there's a huge opportunity there for businesses and companies to kind of increase their market share in that field, in that activity. Then just here's some more inspiration, I guess, just talking about how we can always improve and think about slowing down our processes and future-friendly quality materials and transparency in our garments. So that's something that Columbia does really well, is their transparency of that fair, safe, and clean outdoor industry, and working a lot. They've currently partnered with Patagonia to talk about living wages and fair trade and the environmental sustainability. We focus a lot on those quality materials and seeing how, when we're developing our own technologies, really making sure that those are quality and driven by the want for a cleaner outdoor industry. And then in terms of style, this like seasonless design that we're really trying to work with a lot. So working with those more classic silhouettes, layering everyday comfort, and fit again, but just something that people can keep in their closet for season after season after season. When we get a design brief, it'll tell us how many seasons that style needs to be in. So is it something that we're really focusing more on trend, or something that we're focusing on to really invest in and have more of a long-term investment in those styles? Classic white, something that's really big now and in the future, just that nice clean look. And then transparency and layering is really, really key and important coming into spring 22 and beyond. And then we can evolve with these power styles, jersey dresses, these up-level sweats, again, and retro looks. So those are a lot of the emerging trends, because we communicate who we are through our clothes that we're wearing. And so they're kind of our second skin. And that's how every fashion season kind of reinvents this idea, and the new trends are born. So here's some of the trends that we're thinking will happen in spring 22 and beyond. And then more photos of like our up-leveling sweats, the retro color blocking that we're seeing a lot of, this next level tie-dye. As people are sitting at home, like, how is that going to evolve? A lot of people are doing a lot of work tie-dyeing and baking bread and like doing all of these things that we haven't done in a long time, the masses. So how is that going to evolve as we come out of COVID and things go back to normal? We think a lot about that as designers. And then this is just how can we're working really hard, and is something that's really important to me as a designer, and the women's team I work on is really focusing on that iconic DNA. Columbia is traditionally, their DNA has been very masculine in how we look at our design language and these hard lines. And so how can we evolve that? It's something that we're constantly thinking about, and how can we be distinctive for her, so that when you look at a garment, you know that that's Columbia for her. So here's just some sketches that I've done and worked on. So outdoor life is one of the categories that I work on. So they're very trying to hit that more urban market, just that you want to be outdoors and you want to be comfortable and you might be going on a hike with your friends. Just stuff to throw on, but still protects you from the elements. So we're always rooted in outdoor. We're always rooted in the materials that will protect you from the elements and keep you cool, dry, warm, and protected. And then there's those modern basics, just things that you would have in your closet every day. These soft touch leggings, your cotton pants, your thermal mock necks, jersey dresses, super comfortable basics that aren't based on trend, they're based on longevity. And then modern hike, these are on trail things that are, everything is built with the purpose of being on the trail and hiking and protecting you from the elements and making sure that you're comfortable out there. And then the same with the everyday hike. This is more traditional gear that you'll see, like your technical flannels and a trail short, our titanium leggings that we have. And then the white space is really the most exciting part. Is we do get every season 3 slots to just think really big and imagine like what could we create if we had no margins, if we had no boundaries at all, and what's the challenge, the content, the context, and the solution for a problem that we want to solve for the customer. So it really begins with mapping the market, the products, the services in the market, and then determining whether or not they're served or underserved, and then find gaps in those existing markets. And then I always look at the white space mapping. I look at landing pages of different brands and companies just to see where they're sitting and where the opportunities are that are being missed.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about, this is all, I think, a really great foundation. Do you mind sharing a little bit, like nitty gritty, like what a day-to-day looks like? I mean, I know right now that's probably very different in a COVID world, but as a designer, where do you even begin, right? It's like, there's so much of this upfront research that you're participating in. Like where do you start?
It's such a big, every time someone asks me that question, I still haven't found the answer of where you start. And it's really not that much different in COVID. I think the only difference is it's no longer a tactile job. Like I can't go in and touch the product. I can't go to a store and touch it. I can't. So how do I completely shift my brain and use the skills that I've developed over the years to remember like what a waterproof breathable feels like, and what is it going to do, and because I can't touch it, and know what the gram weight feels like, and it's like there's a knowledge base that's been there for so long that it's not too difficult, but it's no longer tactile. So it's a little sad, I guess, but it's not too much different. I mean, there's so many different ways. I mean, right now, I guess, so a typical day right now is we're working through, we've already designed the product, we've already been briefed, we've already went through that whole process kind of that I've showed you. And so now we're in this zone of working through the prototypes, and we do a lot of virtual 3D modeling. So I'll get my 3D, my 3D design from the factory, and then we'll sit with the team and we look it all over and we really dissect it. And it's a really great way to it's a less expensive way, so that if I see something that's wrong or the fit engineer sees something that's wrong, we can go back to the factory and get something really quickly, and we don't have to worry about that tactile. So I'm not going in and we're waiting 4 to 8 weeks to get that prototype in from the factory, and once we get it in, we have to reject it because they used the wrong material, or they sewed it inside out, or there was something that happened, and we don't have to wait for that anymore. So that's been really interesting and helpful. So that's kind of where we're at in the process right now, is going through that. We also simultaneously, while I'm looking at the designs, we're working through our coloring and testing our fabrics for can I use this particular type of reflective? Can I, what kind of screen printing or heat transfers can I put on this garment? Is the design, once we've seen it, is that something that we have to completely redesign? Like you're constantly doing multiple things at once. You're working with the development team on those testing. You're working with the trims team on testing. You're working with your fit engineering team on fit. You're working with your design team simultaneously. Now we're working on fall 22. So I have to be thinking about that. So every day is like a making sure my list of priorities are where they need to be, because you're covering so many things at once. You really have to, your brain has to shift at all times very, very quickly because the industry moves so incredibly fast. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. Was it a challenge for you to have to kind of think 2 years ahead? Or, you're kind of working in multiple seasons at any given time. Was that a challenge for you to start thinking that way?
Yeah, I mean, at first, for sure. I think you get used to it, and that's what's so exciting about being a designer is you completely, or I mean, we're all designers, regardless of what industry that you go into. You design your life every day. You have to think about the future of your life every day. So it's not, when I say designer, I just mean as a human. But in my particular field, it was it was very difficult because there's a level of pressure there that for me personally was like how am I supposed to be the person that says this is what all of you are going to want 2 to 3 years from now? Like, what is it that qualifies me to have that level of knowledge, and how do I attain that level of knowledge? Because we don't inherently have it. I don't think, but how do I attain it? So at first it was difficult, but over time now it's just how you think, which is a cool thing for life in general. So
Right. Well, part of the job description of a designer is you're part fortune teller, right? In a way, right?
right.
Which I don't know how you ever train for that, but I think. Sorry, I'm kind of dominating the conversation here. We'll open it up for questions, but another question I had is one of the big differences that I've seen from previous guests who have maybe talked about industrial design or product line management or soft goods to this conversation is apparel. There's such a bigger focus, it seems like, on designing apparel for, well, keeping in mind that people are wearing this so close to their skin and it says something about them. Like, we haven't had that conversation about hard product design or soft goods. It seems like this is a much bigger conversation when it comes to apparel. I don't. You shared a little bit about that, but do you have any other thoughts about that in general? I think that's just an interesting difference between some of the other areas of design that we've talked about to apparel. Is this focus on what my clothing says about me as a person?
I mean, I would challenge the other designers if I knew who they were to say that it should be something that we think about regardless of what you're designing. If I'm holding this phone in my hand as a hard good, it's a part of me and it says something about me, what's on it, or how it fits into my hand if I have a bigger hand or a smaller hand. So I would say that that's something that's critical to all design. But fabric and how it drapes on your body, I get, like there's a form to it that is a little bit different, and there's I mean, sometimes my cross-functional partners, like, I will touch a fabric and I will have a visceral reaction to like the feel of it, and what is that like in comparison to touching a waterproof breathable against my skin that feels a little bit plasticky, and I don't like the sound, and like there's so much I guess involved in that is different. But I would challenge to say that in any design field and in any part of outdoor design that you go into, that should be at the forefront of your mind, is how are you interacting with that product. And that's no different with apparel. It's just I guess against your skin. But yeah, I would challenge that's important for all of us, I guess.
Great. So one more from me, and then we've kind of hit the point where we open it up to the rest of the class. Students can go and go down like a fashion pathway, and there's plenty of schools that do that. We're focused on outdoor and performance and technical, like what has that experience been like for you, having to dive deep into how does this material perform versus just purely how does it look?
For sure. Well, I mean, it's interesting because we look so much at fashion. We look to the runway and we look to that a lot, but to think so deeply about what someone is doing in that garment and how are they going to interact with their environment, what is this doing for them, like it's so considerate and so intentional that it's such a beautiful thing to get to do, and it just opens up your empathy mindset, I think, for people, and like it puts you in a completely different space because I'm not just creating something for you to, I don't know, I mean, I don't want to like shit on anybody else's like design field, but like it is so incredibly intentional, and like I said, I mean, I think that's it, and so incredibly considerate, because I have to protect you top of mountain. I have to make sure that when you're running that there isn't anything hanging off of your garment that could hurt, you could get hurt. Like it's extremely a compassionate design field in my mind, and that is just such a great joy and pleasure. But then when I design, I also like to just design my own stuff for whatever, like I'm just constantly designing. And so then when I design my own things, it's like, well, like I think it makes it even that much better because I'm using that mindset in like high fashion, because I love high fashion. So I like to design that stuff as a hobby, So when I do that, I think it makes it that much better. And I think we're seeing the industry, I mean, outdoor is huge on the runways, and it has been, it's going up and up and up and up. And they're seeing that that's a necessity for everyday wear and for streetwear or for high fashion. So I think it's playing such a bigger part in the conversation. Does that answer your question?
It did. Yeah. So I'm
Okay.
going to step back and let the students ask some questions. We have some here in the chat, so I'll read these off for our recording. But
Okay.
Amanda asked, what is your favorite / most rewarding part of being a designer?
My favorite. I guess that the endless possibility, like you're touching so many people, like especially working for huge corporations, like I get to see something, help somebody put their kid on the bus when it's pouring down rain and know that I made that garment, like that, that I helped you be able to do what you need to do safely and comfortably. Like it's a very humbling experience when you see your garment on somebody, helping them do what they want to do.
That's great. Another question from Morgan Davis. How do you attain the knowledge or strengthen your skills in being able to predict what people will want to be wearing in the future? So how do you train to become that fortune teller?
I talk to people all the time. Like I love to talk. So I do a lot of I talked to a bunch of yesterday high school students, just kind of asking them what they like and what they don't like. And I think there's a lot of human to human contact and human psychology of like reading those kinds of things. I'm a big reader, so I read a lot about human, how our brains function, and why we think the way that we think. So for me, I do a lot of reading about human behavior, which I think is a good barometer. It's worked for me so far. So I guess that would be my advice, is to read about human behavior.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. A question from Lauren Echo. How long has Columbia been in the designing for multiple seasons mindset? This is the first time I've heard about that concept, and I'm wondering if this is a new concept for the company.
It is new. I think it's new for a lot of people just because of it takes larger. I think it's new for a lot of older corporations, and a lot of these outdoor companies are a lot older. So that concept of seasonless design and designing for multiple seasons is new for them. So it is relatively new for the organization, and I think for the outdoor industry in general.
A question from, I'm sorry, if it's Carolina, Milan. How can you keep up with trends and have an idea of new trends without knowing them? Kind of a similar question that was asked before, but I guess that's probably really difficult. There's so many trends going on. How do you evaluate what is a trend versus what isn't a trend, or what's a trend that's going to stick or carry forward?
Um, I guess. I mean, some people are better at that than others. I mean, I just think it's something. It's almost a animalistic, intuitive thing that some people have and some people don't. I think. But the beautiful thing about the world now is that at any point in time, you can. Everybody's wearing whatever they want. It doesn't like there isn't there's not a whole lot of risk in a miss. I don't think somebody somewhere is going to pick it up and love it. Like I don't think there's a whole lot of a company just has to decide where they're going to put their stake in the ground for a particular thing. But I don't think that there's too much of a risk of missing. It's just like, is their customer base going to, knowing your customer base is so critical, and then making sure that you're aligned with them on what trends they're following. Columbia is they don't lead in trends. That's not what we do. And so we can kind of look, it can be a little bit easier, and that I can look at what, I don't like, I'm trying to think of like a smaller brand like that we look to, that you would look to them and say, okay, their customer is super into X. So we know that our customer will be into X in a couple of years. Like they'll get there. They're just a late adopter. Columbia's customers are a little bit more late adopters. So it's not as challenging in that way, I guess, for this particular brand. I worked for Eddie Bauer, and it was the same thing, where it was just like they're not the early adopters. So it was a little bit easier. The European brands, I think, are more future. They're more on the edge than the American brands in terms of their products. So I know a lot of us look to those European brands to inspire what we're going to do.
Right. And you're not shouldering that whole load of predicting the future on your own, right? Like how is that split between like a product line manager, you're like the team? Like how is that spread across the team?
It's pretty cool. We work super collaboratively, which is like probably another, I guess that would be my secondary most rewarding thing, is that your relationships with those cross-functional partners like are so important, and we're all collaborating together when we're creating a line plan, and we're sitting in a room for hours on end, like debating back and forth. Like y'all got to have some good debate skills, and like there's a lot of like back and forth of like, this is what I think and this is why, and making sure that you can articulate why you think what it is, and then blending those ideas together. So we'll sit with our PLMs, our merchandisers, the senior designers, the D2s, and sometimes the technical designers all in a room, and just mold that line plan together. So it is really a team effort on how we're going to create the umbrella part, like the fabric part of the umbrella, and then you go down and you meet with your fit engineers, and you meet with your quality assurance people, and you say, okay, and your trims people, and you say like, this is where we're going. What kind of fits should we talk about fits, and we talk about what's happening in the market there, and our fit engineers are really critical in that. And then we meet with our materials partners and say, this is the direction we want to go for fit, this is the direction we want to go for aesthetics, and this t-shirt, this pant, this whatever. And then our materials people say, oh, this is super hot in materials, and this is, so it really is this whole like tree of people helping make those decisions.
How, kind of a follow-up to that, how would you break down, I guess, your role day to day? How much is like pen and paper, actually designing or designing on the computer, versus collaborating, having conversations, versus looking out into the field? It's probably hard to break that down into a pie chart, but How is there any way you could break that down?
Yeah, I mean, I think designing's like 5%. It's such a small part. It's like the smallest. It's the least amount of time. You get the least amount of time to design. It's the smallest part of the entire game is the actual pen to paper designing. You get maybe a month, if that, to design. I think I did 40 styles in a month. So it's very, very, it is, I mean, it is long hours. It is making sure that you are setting yourself up for success because you don't have a lot of time. And you're going through multiple iterations. So it's 40 styles, about, let's say, like 40, I think 40. And then you do two options of each. So that's 80 styles in a month that you have to work through. And then within that, you're um, getting feedback and adjusting along the way, multiple, times. So that's the smallest part,
Right.
is that.
So I imagine that's where your technical skills have to be dialed so you can crank out those sketches, those designs in a really short amount of time.
Oh, yes.
Another question from Paige. What has been your favorite project or piece of clothing that you've designed or worked on?
When I was Eddie Bauer, I got to work on I pitched this like for women by women, top of mountain product. And I worked with Melissa Arnott, who is in the Guinness Book of World Records for climbing mountain for Everest, and a couple of snowboarders and rock climbers. And we all would just sit and talk about product and what they needed and how. And we designed the first like top of mountain collection for Eddie Bauer, and the jacket, the telemetry got outside magazines like best jacket of the year. So I was like, yes, like it was such a rewarding experience. And it was so fun to talk to like these, incredibly inspiring women about the something, because I don't do that stuff. Like that's not my game. Like I'm not, so I'll like, that's too much for me. So to get to talk to these women and then translate it in a way that it doing something that I don't do, and knowing that I created something that they were proud of, and that the industry was like, yes, that's, that you hit that, like that was huge for me. Like knowing that I could not be the person. I'm not designing for myself. I'm designing for somebody else. I'm not the target customer. And being able to really take myself out of the equation and put myself in somebody else's shoes and know that I did it on that level of success was like an epic feeling for sure.
That's amazing. Do you remember the first time that you felt that, or was that the first time, or do you remember, I like to ask designers this question of, do you remember the first moment that you saw one of your products out in the wild?
Yes, it was the pearl plush jacket. And it was just this little, like, it was like, I remember walking into the store and being like, oh my God, like it was so crazy to see that jacket there. So yeah, I totally remember. I was super bummed about the colors because it totally wasn't my bag, but really, but yeah, I totally do. That's for a big corporation, but for like my own, like the first time I made a wedding dress for a girlfriend, and like being able to use those skills that I hadn't had, like, so there's just so many, I've done so many different things that they have different, for a corporation, it's this, for like my personal, it's this. And so it's a little bit different, but for a corporation, yeah, that pearl plush jacket.
That's great. Looks like our last question from students, Callie. You said you said that actually learning about different areas of outdoors like hunting helped open your mind and understanding with how to design for those activities better. Would you recommend designing for activities you already know and know a lot about?
I've never designed for, this is the first time in my career in a decade that I've designed for what I know. So I've never done that. Like I went heliboarding because I was designing snowboarding gear for, Olympic athletes. So I think it's being uncomfortable and designing things that you don't know about is probably the best thing that you could possibly do. The learning curve is insane, and you have to be incredibly comfortable with being uncomfortable and asking lots of questions. And I am a firm believer in getting out and doing the thing, Like, I don't duck hunt. I mean, like, I loved doing it at the time, but I'm not doing it now because I'm not designing the stuff. But I, I think if you have the right mindset, you can be super successful in that. But if you don't, then design what you know, and there's nothing wrong with either of those things. But there's, for me and my personality, I enjoy designing what I don't know, because then um, I'm not as affected, I guess, as a creative when someone don't like it, because it's not, I'm not the target customer. Now it's a little bit more difficult designing global women's sportswear, because that's the stuff that I would wear if I was to go. So I'm a little bit more connected to it and having to stretch in a different way of like, Jocelyn, this is not for you. You don't have to get so keyed up and like defensive about things, So there's challenges in both.
As a follow-up to that question, critique is a big thing that we talk about in this program and any design program, right? Learning how to give critique, accept critique.
Mm-hmm.
Has that been an issue for you, having to remove yourself a little bit or realize that you are not your designs, that if someone attacks your designs, they're not attacking you personally? Has that been an issue? How have you navigated that?
When I first started, it was horrible. like I died. Like, it was so hard. It was not, I had to really grow in that space for me personally. I had other strengths, but that was not it. But now it's whatever, but in the beginning, like that first year was really difficult. Really, really difficult, because you're used to, I mean, in school, creating things that are, you're still using a brief. And when I was in school, you were using a brief and you were still designing something, but it was because it's what you wanted, and so you're used to creating what you want. And now you're out in the real world and you're not creating what you want anymore. You're creating for a client, you're creating for a company, and it's somebody else's vision and it's somebody else's thing. And so it was really difficult for me to understand that and remove myself. Now it's easy. And to that point, not very many people are good at giving critique. Like, quite frankly, not very many people are good at it. So being one of the people that are really good at it, like giving it, taking it is something that you can work through. But like giving someone a good critique is like, please learn how to do that. It would be so helpful.
Do you know, like, what are some of the elements of a good critique? Put you on the spot, but
right. I being able to really break down what you're looking at, like being able to break down what you're looking at and having the vocabulary to help someone get to the space where you're thinking they need to be. Like, you need to know what you're looking at and what you want in order to give someone feedback. And I think a lot of times in creatives, and because most product line managers, material developers, they all went to design school. We all just went to different fields. And so as designers, we are inherently sometimes in the creative clouds. So being able to really hone in and say what you need and what you're looking for somebody, what you're looking for is really, really critical. And then just saying thank you. Like, just say thank you, or or I'll get back to you if you can't articulate it, stuff like that. I got another meeting that's starting.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up there. I appreciate you taking time. You've been really generous with your time.
I really appreciate it. This was so fun, and I hope that y'all wake up and have a blessed, joyful day and an incredible weekend. Our weekend should not be an escape from our weekday, even though they are. Like, I don't know. I hope y'all have a great rest of your day.
Well, thank you. No, thanks for taking time. I wish you could hear all the applause and everything from the students, but that doesn't work on Zoom. So,
well, you can turn on your mics and give me applause.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. If people want to stay in touch with you, how's the best way to do that?
You can just shoot on my email, Chase, that you have.
Okay. And then,
thank you, Spencer.
And then LinkedIn too, if people want to connect with you there.
Oh, yeah.
Good place.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Perfect.
sure.
Well, Jocelyn, thanks again.